Going on, my friends? I'm Rick, and this is your seat at the table. Little Missy's sitting off to my right, and got the door open here so she can run in and out of the room today. It is Sunday the 15th. It is Father's Day in 2024. Of course, by the time you see this video, it probably will be a week or so later. Anyway, we are looking at second edition's Forgotten Realms official game accessory, Gateway to Ravens Bluff, the Living City. An accessory by the RPGA Network for characters of all levels for use of Forgotten Realms campaign world. Right. So here's the nice little map of the city that comes with it, and we got basically a glance through it. A bunch of personalities, Ravens Bluff personalities, people for your characters and players to run into, a number of businesses and their proprietors. A tail within a tail, hounds in the hair, rats. Ravens Bluff, a geopolitical background, Ravens Bluff encounter charts, Living City Writer's Guide, and the RPGA Network membership forum. So we get welcomes to Ravens Bluff. Excuse me if I'm stuttering just a little bit. It is a little early in the morning, and ironically, I don't have my teeth in, so it will cause me to sound a little different. First thing about Ravens Bluff. Ravens Bluff is this player-driven system, city that's set up in Faerun, off the Sea of Fallen Stars, I believe, or is it Sword Coast? Sea of Fallen Stars. It was set up for players and members of the Role-Playing Gaming Association Network, or the RPGA, and which was sponsored by TSR back in the day. And so pretty much everything that's in these supplements are submitted to TSR back in the day, and then pending their approval, found their way into several, because there's a number of these books that support this city. So the city itself was also a location where a lot of players at conventions could go and sit down and play RPGA-sanctioned tournaments and campaigns and gain points for their characters and points for themselves, and the GMs could also gain points and thus gain ranking. So this is one of those kind of unique player-friendly additions to the game system of that era. So we get into the city government and organization, the non-player character officials, heads of departments, other officials, the regency, regent of the guilds, regent of the the tax people, regent or the I guess that would be the finance and or private purse. Yeah, I'm bumbling all over that one. Regent of the Harbor, the City Courts, the Ministry of the Military Structure, Council of Lords, Advisory Council, the Clerical Circle, Chief Prelate, Gods of the Civic Region. Right. So we get other worship, the guilds in Ravens Bluff. So it goes down the list of, and a brief entry on a number of the main guilds. Then we get their main primary characters. So Charles Oliver O'Kane, the Lord Mayor, and goes on through these fine folks. And I've tapped these character NPCs numerous times over the decades as a means of I need a nice city with some reasonably leveled officials. You just tap what's already here, change the name. Why bother creating a whole new set of stuff when you can just run down to the, Xerox off a copy or scan a copy of the page and then, scratch out the name and pin in a new name and boom, there you go. You got all your stats, all your information, personality quirks, all that other stuff ready to go. So we got Lady Catherine Rain Moorland, and then Rolf Sunny River, the Chief Constable, Lord Thomas Raphael, the Lord Regent, and it keeps right on going. So a lot of these pages are key NPCs that you may or may not run into while bebopping around Ravens Bluff. And we're talking, upper crust people for the most part. And then we get into the City Watch, Ways Unknown. Ways Unknown is a one-story stone building with a thatched roof and small tower. The owner is Aaron Lasher, a guide. Aaron provides services to caravans and traders, but has been known to lead adventures to specific destinations. So consider that in the early Dungeons and Dragons, we had this thing called henchmen and hirelings. So, for example, one of those hirelings your group might acquire is a guide to take you to the site of the tomb or the lost treasure or the suspected dragon's lair or whatever. And the odds are 90% that that person is not going to go inside. So they're looking to get immediate payout right then and there for their services to guide you to there. And then at that point, they leave. They go home. And they may have a couple retainers with them, or assistants or porters or whatever. These people are you're going to pay them to loiter around outside on the grounds that you're coming back, and will need their services in return, or they're going to leave you when you get to your destination, because why would they stick around? Especially if you're going to cheese off a dragon or something. City Watch Barracks, a couple of the important members of the watch, various levels. And we get the barracks blueprints here, and then we get the Happy Stein. Is a tavern housed in the one-story stone building with a slate roof. The Happy Stein serves fair food and offers a good selection of beer, ale, whales, blah blah blah. So we move on. We get the layout for the floor plan and stuff for the Happy Stein, and some of the people you can find there. The Shod Talon. The Shod Talon is an old stucco building with a slate roof. There's a 15 by 20 foot patio perched on the roof. It is accessed by a spiral staircase in the storage room. The sign in front of this tavern displays a giant rock and its talons outstretched. Talons are covered with steel. Excuse me. The tavern keeper is Voron Arambes, an elderly one-armed elf. His prices are higher. So this is a tavern or an inn that's geared towards elves and half-elves specifically. It tends to cost the prices are a little bit higher, but that's because the clientele are willing to spend that to get a breakaway from the rest of the humans in their group. And some elves just don't like to hang out with humans in the first place. Sparkling Edge is a gem shop. Pig in a Poke is a one-story stucco building and shingle butcher shop offering fresh and preserved meats. Important particular knowledge of customers allowed to buy their meat on the hoof and have it cut to order, right? And this is one of those many little secondary shops that when you're in an urban environment or you're stocking for an adventure, a lot of players tend to, these days, ignore. Why would we bother with that? Well, back in the day, half the fun of the game was getting to the destination and needing to spend some of that hard-won coin that you've looted from wherever on consumables and stuff that you're going to utilize on your next adventure or while you're off, on your time off. So just the opportunities for further play. Generally speaking, it's been my experience that most players tend to want to ignore this sort of part. This part of the logistics chain that's supposed to be part of the game in my head. So, Ye Who Dares is a one-story stucco building with slate roof houses the forge and workspace of John Branding, an armorer. Ye Who Dares is known in how as having adequate arms and armor at reasonable prices. Now, what goes on to say is he's willing to work with adventurers, sometimes even give them stuff up front with the idea that they're going to pay him when he comes back. One of his speeds of supporting is that he sells items that are a bit cheaper than other armorers in town, and that's because, not to say that his work is shoddy, it's not. He just uses lesser material or spends less effort on buckles and leather strapping and things like this. So ideally the armor that you purchase from him wears out faster. And it says that right in here. So you got to kind of play that by ear. That's one of those things that I loved to do back in the day. Armor and weapons have a saving throw. They have hit damage. They actually can be destroyed and broken. And check it out, man. Magic weapons and armor can also be destroyed and broken under the right kind of circumstances. You don't think so? Well, your expensive fancy sword gets buried by an 8th level wizard's use of Dispel Magic. Suddenly your magic sword is no longer magic and it's subject to everything else that any other metal weapon would be subject to. That's just an example how that could possibly play out. And one of those things I loved to do back in the day, and I still will if a group will agree to it, is that whenever you get a natural one you're using your weapon and you get a natural one, it's not always should not always be a fumble. Perhaps, just perhaps, your weapon has been trusty sword for a long time, has reached the end of its life, and it breaks off somewhere along the shaft. Blade breaks in half. Then what do you do? Suddenly your sans sword or your long sword just became an impromptu short sword with a slight negative to its use. I mean, that's one of those things. It's like armor. Your armor can only take so much beating before it literally disintegrates. And if your characters don't, have armor, and this is part of the old school set, the ability to mend and repair your own gear in the field was kind of a necessary thing if you were really being true to the game. So this is one of those things, one of those parts of an argument or the conversation about full immersion that to me always gets brushed aside. We want the full idea. We're going to fully roleplay and become the characters in the environment that we're in, but yet we still want to forego all the basic logistics and things that would go on with our regular day-to-day routines because they're not fun or they're not considered important unless they become important. I'm not saying you have to dominate your sessions with that sort of stuff, but the occasional, oh crap, my sword broke, has some value. It's just like the occasional, oh crap, I left my pouch in that other dungeon 16 miles away. What are we going to do? Well, what was in your pouch, and is it worth shuffling all the way back with the possible risks that involves to retrieve it, which also potentially has risks involved, then to return to where you're currently location. And as it's a learning curve, I guess I shouldn't have left my damn pack laying there, that kind of stuff. So we got the Narwhal Manor, the Hounds and the Hare, a tale within a tale, all right? So it begins under the branches of a huge oak, the coolest spot in a very hot marketplace. The storyteller normally assesses his audience. There's a usual scattering of bright young street urchins hovering over him. A few bored second and third sons of the merchants stand further back. Several lovely veiled ladies walk by, and the storyteller adjusts to the carefully disheveled strands of his gray wig so he can see them better. As the ladies move to join the crowd, he begins his first story with laughter and the flourish of his hands. Listen, gentle ladies and brave warriors, to this tale of how the Black Temple outside the city was created. And so on. Hence the lead up for a possible adventure just outside the city. And then we have Hounds and the Hare. Player characters for this encounter can be of almost any level since the object is to avoid direct combat. Now the party is moving through the normally crowded Ravens Bluff street. In daytime, the north side is heavily shadowed alley. Through the alley probably will not be immediately noticed by the player characters. A small, wiry young man blending with the crowd comes up behind the party, picking on a magic user or an armored fighter. If the party is a recognizable unit, the young man will select the last member of the party. Then the party is directly across from the alley. The young man will attempt to make an intentionally bungled attempt to pick a pocket or cut a purse. There you go. Then we got Brats. Brats is an AD&D game adventure for 1 to 6 characters at levels 1 to 3. This adventure is designed to give player characters an introduction to the hazards of Ravens Bluff. The adventure is not particularly deadly, but the party will need at least 1 silver or magical weapon. Yeah, were-rats specifically, right? So, Bear of Speedy Trial, the tall blonde woman with the 1 green earring. Your party gets set up. A little bit of knowledge, encounter 1, encounter 2, things that go bump in the day. Encounter 3, the tall blonde woman with the 1 green earring. Encounter 4, a fair or speedy trial. So, after you're accused of taking this lady's earring, even though it was a setup, you're going to spend a little bit of time in the jail. So after a few hours in the jail, the PCs are taken to the court to answer the charges against them. Judge summons the PCs to a private conference. This encounter takes place in the Ravens Bluff courthouse. I think we can do something if you're willing to do something for me, kind of setup, right? That's kind of how this leans into this. Never too many volunteers. That is encounter 5, encounter 6, an alley to call our own. Encounter 7, you dirty rat. Encounter 8, but where's the treasure? Encounter 9, we don't get to keep it all, right? And then we get into some little bit more deeper stuff. We got Ravens Bluff, a geopolitical background. Yeah. Strategically located on the east end of a large harbor, the Fire River enters into the harbor near the city. A major trade route overland joins Procamper to the south, with the cities north of the river Vesper. These combined factors make Ravens Bluff a natural economic trading area. The surrounding farmland is generally rich, blah, blah, blah. So it goes on to how this interacts with the region and the greater areas of Fair Run all together. And we get into their idea of a encounter chart. Actually, a couple different ones, and then we have something that's really interesting. This is what I was talking about, how this particular Ravens Bluff was set up for the players and the GMs to contribute stuff over time. And so what they have here is TSR included the Living City Writers Guidelines, personalities, mini adventures, encounters, bestial creatures, legends, businesses, the basics, ethics, and then we have a disclosure form right here that you would either cut it out, or ideally you would copy this and then you would send it in with your submission. Then you have an application for the now long defunct Role-Playing Game Association Network, which like I said, I've done a couple videos on a handful of their newsine that they put out, the Polyhedron. I still have quite a few eventually that I haven't done. One time I had many of them, a lot of them, but they got destroyed. That's a sad, long, sappy story that nobody really gives a shit about. Excuse the French, or the Orkish, I guess, however you want to look at it. What I find interesting about these sort of guidelines is that while it's dated and belonged to a defunct company, the mechanics behind it is sound. So you could look at this as a guideline for writing submissions for any game that you enjoy to the company that they have. Now, I, of course, invite you to go to that company and look for their writer's guidelines, because I'm sure most of them would have them, so you know what you need to do and what you need to do to submit. But this also works pretty solid because it's pretty common sense, All right, it says special characters, new creatures must be detailed with the AD&D game statistics. List these statistics such as number appearing, movement, hit dice, number of attacks, etc. as they appear in the monster's compendium. Include information on where the creature can be found, its habits, its motivation, and how it reacts to other creatures and people. So one of the most common submissions has always been monsters and creatures and things like that. You got to figure for every one that we see in a book supplement that's considered new or now canon, there's probably 100 that were rejected by the editors at the various companies, right? So the same thing. So how do you apply? What do you do to set up a mini adventure? How do you, if you're going to add personalities? Like I said, they wanted it all. This really opened up the window. So you were submitting possible businesses or possible personalities or little mini adventures to take place in and around Ravens Bluff itself. So then we get to basics for, it says all submissions should be typed and double spaced on 8 and 1.5 by 11-inch white paper. Computer printouts are acceptable if the printing is dark enough to be easily read. Be sure to leave a 1-inch minimum margin around all 4 sides of your text. On your first page of your submission, put your name, address, telephone number, and the RPGA Network membership number. You wish to use a pen name on your article included after the title of the article. On each of the following pages, please put your name, etc., etc. I'm a big fan of the pen names because of a number of damn reasons. Anyway, that is Gateway to Ravens Bluff, the Living City. Now, like I said, I've already done one review on another item that revolves around Ravens Bluff, and I kind of want to say that they came out eventually with a box set, an actual city set for Ravens Bluff, but it was so effing expensive, I don't think I bought it. If I'm wrong, I'm thinking something else. It's like I said before in another video. Back in the late 80s, they had Waterdeep was the big city for Forgotten Realms 2nd edition. And it came with a massive box set with a lot of extra maps and some detailed stuff. It was a beautiful set, but they wanted set, and we're talking in late 80s money, they wanted like $90 for it. That'd be like a couple $100 for it today. I absolutely could not swing the money for it. I wanted it, but I didn't want it that bad. And then they followed it up with Undermountain, which was basically layering deeper under the city, and it added yet a whole nother level of play and dimension, but the cost, once again, was prohibitive for me. It's kind of a broken record, I get it, but if you think of back in the 80s, I would go to on average, every 2 weeks, I would go to the game store and spend $50 on average. And for that $50, I could get a hardback core book, one of these modules, because these run about $8 or $9 a piece, maybe $10, and then a couple bubble packs of minis. So I was trying to get as much bang for my buck, and I was also buying across multiple fronts. So I had a number of different game systems that I were interested in at any given time, and so I was buying material as that material came out as often as I could. And then I had to weigh, is this one box item that's worth damn near $100 versus the 8 or 9 or 5 or 6 or 7 other books I could get for the same price. So it always came out to the more is better, and in some cases, which today looking back, I kind of sad about it, but it is what it is. GUI Cube, for example, is a independent company that is putting out some really good stuff. I haven't bought any of their material, but I know somebody that's a real big fan of it. And they started advertising a big city box set, or their version of one, and they're wanting like upwards of $125 for the main set and a printed version. And I'm like, it sounds great, looks beautiful, great artwork, blah blah blah. I don't have, I just don't have the money for it. It's not going to happen. Not everybody is, flush with cash. Anyway, I'm Rick. This is your seat at the table. If you like the channel, hit the thumbs up. Don't be afraid to subscribe. If you don't like the channel, hit the thumbs up. And don't be afraid to subscribe. That way you can rail at me and make fun of me. And tell your friends, tell your associates, tell that stranger across the street that thinks you're a weirdo anyway. Because that's part of being the gamer that we all know and love. Tell them.